Hello, welcome back to Mark's House and Garden UK, where I've started collecting plants for my new Jurassic jungle garden. And the first plant I've gone out to purchase are 3 of these Castor Oil plants, Fatsia Japonica. They're referred to as Castor Oil plants, but in actual fact that's a bit of a misnomer. They've been misnamed because this is not a plant which produces castor oil, and it's not a plant which produces the castor bean that castor oil comes from. So the more correct name actually for these is the false castor oil plant. Do you know where they got their name castor oil plant from? Because I don't. And if you do, pop it in the comments box below this video. I bought these because they're large-leaved, hardy and evergreen. And in this video I'm going to plant these 3 castor oil plants, or Fatsia Japonicas, in this mound here. Now this mound is made from the spoil, or the soil, that came out of this hole. And in a month's time, if I were to be standing here, I would be up to my waist in water, because this is going to be one of the 3 new ponds I'm constructing around my wildlife pond. And I'm making this like a separate area of the garden, a garden room if you like, and I'm cordoning it off with 3 large mounds created by digging 3 large ponds. In these ponds, whereas I don't have fish in the wildlife pond because the fish might eat the eggs of the newts and toads and frogs, in these ponds I do intend keeping some native species UK fish, for example common carp or tench, but that's for a future video. In this video I'm going to give you a fact file on the castor oil plant. I've gone away and do some research. I think that's a great idea whenever you buy a new plant. Do some research and find out what it likes and what it doesn't like. And I'll share that research with you in this video as I'm planting these 3 castor oil plants. Incidentally, you can see I've put rocks along here. A subscriber, I can't remember your name I'm afraid, but very correctly and observantly pointed out that if I don't shore this mound back, when it rains it will probably get washed into the pond. I always intended to do something about that, so I've just put these big rocks there. They will shore that mound back, and also they'll provide in these little nooks and crannies habitat for wildlife, and also they'll provide me with a place to plant ferns. So as time goes by and this area of the garden develops and matures, you'll see those disappear. You may also be wondering how I'm going to treat the edge of the pond liner. I've got a pet hate. I do not like to see pond liner. What I'm going to do is I've got a laser level. You'll see this in another video in time to come. The pond liner is on order. I've got a laser level. I'll draw a perfectly horizontal line across that bank. I'll cut into it with a saw, and then I'll drive the pond liner into that slice with wooden pegs, and eventually that grass will grow over and hide the pond liner. That's the plan. I've done it before and it works. But again, I digress. Let's talk about the Fatsia Japonica. Now this is a hardy evergreen shrub. That is about 18 inches tall at the moment, but that will grow up to 2.5 to 4 meters in both height and spread, so it becomes a large evergreen shrub in the right conditions. I'll talk about the conditions in a minute, and that is why I'm positioning them quite distant from each other along this mount. I want 3. I always think plants look better in groupings of 3, so there will be 3 in this mound, approximately equidistant apart, because what you have to remember whenever you plant any plant is the ultimate height. And the ultimate height and spread of that, although it can be pruned, can be 2.5 meters, which is bigger than my arm span. So remember that when you're planting a plant. Native to Japan and North Korea, Fatsia Japonica, so as the name would suggest, native to Japan. It will grow in moist but free draining soil, and whenever I read that comment I always think, what does moist but free draining mean? I suppose if it's moist and it's free draining, it's going to be dry eventually. I think the point is, apart from chalky soils, that will grow in pretty much any soil. It's quite a robust plant. provided it's not chalky and providing it's not waterlogged. And in that case, that's what moist but free draining means. Now this soil here is very sandy. It's very free draining. So to give these a head start, the first thing I've done is I've given them a good soak in water. I bought them from Lidl, would you believe, where you can currently get them for £6.99, so I think that's a good value. I've soaked them in water because I think any shop bought plant has probably not had enough water, so I always give them a good soaking for a couple of hours to get them hydrated. I will next dig a hole, and in the hole I'll put some organic matter. That organic matter will do two things. It will retain moisture in the planting hole, and it'll also give these a little bit of food whilst they get started. You don't want to feed the periphery of the plant too much because you want it to go looking for food with its roots. So let's get a hole dug and let's get some organic matter in that hole. Let's get that planted and let's talk about some more facts about the Fatsia Japonica. I've got some compost on hand. I've also got my spade here, so I shall dig into this bank a little and create a planting hole for this, the first of my false castor oil plants, Fatsia Japonica. You can see there, very sandy. That's very free draining soil. Probably a bit too free draining for this plant. It likes a bit of moisture, so that's why I'm going to add a little bit of organic matter around its root. Underneath here, about a foot down, there is grass, because this mound has been placed on my grass, so there will be some topsoil for it to put roots into, and also as that grass starts to rot and decay, it will feed the plant. That hole is big enough for that plant now. I'm going to plant it there, slightly elevated, so that it's got room to grow on either side. I don't want it coming too far out over the water, although it would be quite nice if it did come over a little and kind of go over the edge of the water. And that way I imagine that insects will be able to drop off the leaves into the pond and feed the fish. Right, let's get a little bit of compost in there. And don't forget, I have already soaked those castor oil plants, and there's a little bit of compost going in the hole. And here is the plant coming out of its pot. You can see it's got a nice root system. I won't do too much damage to it, I'll just loosen it up a little bit. I'll place it in, and now I'm just going to bring the soil in around its roots and firm it in. Now this plant, believe it or not, flowers. It produces lovely white flowers in the autumn time, and those flowers eventually become blackberries, but those blackberries are not edible. They're probably useful for the wildlife, but you mustn't eat them. In actual fact, people suggest that you should wear gloves when you're handling this plant. I think it might have a slightly, what's the word, a sap that can be irritant, so just be careful if you've got sensitive skin. I don't suffer from that. I tend to do anything without gloves, but I've just bought these gloves, so I'm getting some use out of them. So there's one of them planted. In 10 to 20 years, believe it or not, that could very easily be 2.5 to 4 meters in height and spread, and these leaves, albeit small at the moment, will eventually grow to 45 centimeters in diameter, and they're lovely and palmate, and they're perfect for a jungle garden. So there you go. As you can see, the first of my Fatsias is planted, and as you've probably noticed as I've watered that, a lot of that water is running off, so I'm just going to give it a helping hand by placing a few boulders around the base. That'll do a couple of things. Number one, it'll kind of bed it in, but it'll also help any water that falls on that slope be retained and go down to the plant's roots, which will help it become more established. What I like about the position of this plant here is it's in the shelter of this mound, which means that for the first couple of years, until it outgrows the mound, it will get some protection from the prevailing wind which comes from over there in that direction. Having said that, this is a plant which is tolerant to windy sites, and it is also tolerant to coastal sites. So if you live near the coast, this might be a good jungle plant for your jungle garden. It will also tolerate full sun and part shade, and when established, full shade. So quite a robust and versatile plant. I've got one in. I've got two more to plant. The pond liner's on order. I'll be putting lots of ferns in here, and eventually that will be a lovely specimen in my jungle garden. Eventually, I hope that this will be like a theatre in the round around my wildlife pond. Hope you've enjoyed that. Fatsia Japonica, false castor oil plant, and if you know why it's called a castor oil plant, again, please do let me know. And I'll see you soon for some more Jurassic Plant jungle adventures. Bye for now.